Welcome back to Organikong Pagpangumya. Today, we will be introducing to you to the different kinds of fertilizers for better understanding. If you are new to Organikong Pagpanguma, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and follow us in our FB page and in our YouTube channel. Any substance that contains one or more essential plant nutrient elements has the potential to be used as fertilizer. Fertilizers are broadly classified as either organic or inorganic, although the distinction between the two types is not always clear-cut. Urea, for example, is a naturally occurring organic compound, but chemically synthesized urea is generally grouped with inorganic fertilizers. Natural organic fertilizer has to be derived from either plant or animal materials containing one or more elements other than carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that are essential for plant growth. Organic food production, however, allows for a broader definition that includes naturally occurring inorganic substances such as rock phosphate, elemental sulfur, and gypsum that are not chemically modified. Plant roots absorb the majority of nutrients from the soil solution as simple inorganic ions. Larger molecules can also be absorbed, but the rate of absorption is slow. Most organic fertilizers dissolve readily in water and are immediately available to plants for uptake. When used according to recommendations, these types of fertilizer efficiently supply the required nutrients for plant growth and are safe for the environment. However, excessive rates can injure plant roots and potentially lead to environmental degradation. Organic fertilizers are more complex chemical substances that take time to be broken down into forms usable by plants. They are slow-release type of fertilizers compared to the quick-release characteristic of most inorganic fertilizers. It is important to apply these organic fertilizers well before periods of rapid plant growth. Organic fertilizers usually have a low salt index, so larger amounts can be applied at one time without causing injury to plant roots. With organic nitrogen sources, except urea, one application can be made without having to be concerned about losing most of the nitrogen to leaching. However, even organic fertilizers applied at excessive rates can cause environmental degradation due to nitrate leaching or runoff of soluble organic compounds. The cost of organic fertilizers at agricultural stores on a per kilo of nutrient basis is usually higher than quick-release inorganic fertilizer. Manure, compost, and many other materials used as organic fertilizers add considerable amount or quantities of organic matter to the soil. Organic matter can increase soil drainage, aeration, water holding capacity, and the ability to the soil to hold nutrients. The beneficial effects of organic matter on soil structure can have a greater effect on plant growth than the fertilizer value of some of these organic materials. Now let's talk about the slow-release fertilizers. Slow-release fertilizers are organic fertilizers made up of either larger molecules that require microbial action for degradation or regular fertilizers such as urea that is coated in some way to reduce solubility. Like organic fertilizers, they have low burn potential. They also release fertilizer over a longer period of time. Many formulations are now available that have release rates of 50 days to over 1 year. They are particularly useful on sandy soils where leaching of nitrogen is a concern. Higher rates of fertilizer can be applied without the fear of losing nitrate with excessive rainfall. The main disadvantages of slow-release fertilizer are the high cost relative to quick-release fertilizer, and the release rate is too slow for fast-growing crops. Let's talk about fertilizer grades. The grade or analysis of a fertilizer represents its percent composition of the three primary plant nutrients. By convention, nitrogen is expressed in an elemental basis as percent nitrogen, whereas phosphorus and potassium are expressed on an oxide basis as percent phosphate and percent potash, respectively. Law requires that any material sold as fertilizer be clearly labeled with its fertilizer grade, and this analysis is guaranteed by the manufacturer. The first number in the series is the percent N, the second number is the percent phosphorus, and the third number is the percent potash. It should be noted that nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium do not exist in fertilizer in these forms. Rather, these forms are calculated based on the elemental analysis and then simply used to allow a convenient way of comparing the nutrient value of one fertilizer with another. For example, a 10-20-10 fertilizer has the same amount of nitrogen and potash, but twice as much phosphate as a 10-10-10 fertilizer. Also note that the percentages do not add up to 100. This is because the fertilizer is made up of other elements not included in the analysis, and in some cases may also contain a filler or carrier. The nutrient composition of common inorganic chemical fertilizer sources is provided in Table 1. The approximate primary macronutrient composition of selected organic fertilizer is provided in Table 2. Organic fertilizers also provide other plant nutrients including variable amounts of micronutrients. Here in Table 1 is showing us the approximate nutrient composition of various inorganic chemical fertilizer, and those fertilizers marked with an asterisk are acceptable of organic fruit and vegetable production. We have the nutrient sources, the fertilizer material, and the corresponding composition of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. We have nitrogen sources as quick release. We have ammonium nitrate, ammonium sulfate, ammonium thiosulfate, anhydrous ammonia, calcium nitrate, diammonium phosphate, monoammonium phosphate, potassium nitrate, sodium nitrate, urea, and urea ammonium nitrate. We have also nitrogen sources which are slow release. We have isobutylidine diurea, polymer-coated urea, sulfur-coated urea, urea formal formaldehyde. We have also phosphorus sources such as diammonium phosphate, monoammonium phosphate, rock phosphate, super phosphate, triple super phosphate. And for potassium sources, we have potassium chloride, potassium magnesium sulfate, potassium nitrate, potassium sulfate. For calcium sources, we have calcium sulfate, which is the gypsum, calcium nitrate, calcium chloride, calcitic lime, and dolomite. For magnesium sources, we have magnesium sulfate, which is the Epsom salt, potassium magnesium sulfate, and dolomite. For sulfur sources, we have ammonium thiosulfate, ammonium sulfate, calcium sulfate, elemental sulfur, potassium magnesium sulfate, potassium sulfate, magnesium sulfate. For boron sources, we have borax, boric acid, solubor, sodium pentaborate, sodium tetraborate. For copper sources, we have cupric chloride, copper sulfate, and copper chelate. For iron sources, we have iron sulfate and iron chelate. For manganese sources, we have manganese sulfate, manganese chelate. Molybdenum sources, we have ammonium molybdenate. We have sodium molybdate. Zinc sources, we have zinc oxide, zinc sulfate, and zinc chelate. Now, this table 2 is showing us the approximate nutrient composition of various organic fertilizers. Here we have the organic materials and the nutrient composition for each kind of organic materials. For manures, we have beef, dairy, horse, poultry, rabbit, sheep, alfalfa hay, blood meal, bone meal, which is raw, bone meal, which is steamed, composted yard waste, cottonseed meal, fish meal, green straw, kelp or seaweed, lawn clippings, leaves, which are broad leaves, milo organite, sawdust, soybean meal, wood ashes. Friends, these are the different kinds of fertilizers that we can use in our farm. You can have a choice of your need in order to keep up the need of your farm. Thank you. Hope you enjoy the presentation.